Bone Lab's been out for a couple days now, and in the shadow of its immense hype and praise, not many videos have tried to accurately assess the quality of the game itself. Speaking as someone who was a reasonably big fan of Boneworks, I thought the game was the best VR game to release, and though flawed in many ways, was still an extremely exciting and unique game in general. Even ignoring how much it changes VR, it's still solidly worth a play on its own. Because of this, Bone Lab was something I was extraordinarily excited to play ever since it was only known as Project 4. I still went in with tempered expectations up to the launch day for many reasons, but I tried to be optimistic either way. However, I can say that the more I've thought about it since completing it, the more I've realized how much I feel practically robbed by spending $40 on something dropping in the state that it did. Bone Lab, to put into simple terms, is not its own game. It is simply Boneworks with a coat of paint, and not even a fresh one. Though you would expect a game which its main selling point is a polished, further developed version of Boneworks' Marrow interaction engine, Bone Lab, in more ways than anyone could have expected, downgrades Boneworks' player body, something many people would agree no other game matched in quality. Here's a brief overview of some of the glaring issues with this core element of the game.
My first and most glaring criticism with the game is the jumping and air control. To illustrate this, here is a clip of my first honest reaction to how the jumping mechanics feel in Bone Lab. Can I grab this? Why can't I? What the hell? Oh, what? I just want to climb up here. The lack of air control compared to Boneworks is married perfectly with the lack of control you have over your character's movement. No more is there super jumping while running. Gone is crouching while moving, except virtually, which sucks anyways. These are the kinds of downgrades in physicality and game feel I never thought I would see from SLZ. Even still, the regular jumping feels inconsistent, randomly sending you up only a foot and sometimes the regular height, making the entire game feel wrong. My second issue with the player body is the climbing. Oh god, the climbing. If I wanted to get thrown over a ledge, the second I climb over it, I would play fucking Gorilla Tag.
Oh, why? Why do you go in the fucking wrong direction?
When you climb over a ledge onto a narrow platform, you usually want to stand up when you get on top. But in Bone Lab, you have to stand up so carefully that you might as well put on slow motion to do it. If you fail to stand up carefully enough, you're punished with being sent off the platform and are doomed into repeating the process again. And this all depends on your body not getting caught on whatever you're climbing. There have been times in Bone Lab where I've been trying to climb ladders, and when I get to the peak, I can't make it through the handrails that are supposed to help you get over the ledge at the top. Hold on, just do this. Yeah, there you go. Next up is the hybrid virtual and physical crouching system. All of my problems with the jumping in the game are rooted in this shiny new gameplay feature. The seated and standing modes from Boneworks have been merged into one hybrid mode. When I first heard this, I thought, wow, that's smart, because there are going to be vehicles in the game, so I'd like to be able to sit down whenever. But I didn't think about the deeper implications of this mechanic. The coolest part of room scale VR is being able to move around your room. Hybrid mode makes it so your character's head doesn't follow your physical head if you're sprinting. How did they think it was a good idea to take away a fundamental part of room scale VR whenever you're sprinting? My bottom line here can be summed up as if it isn't broke, don't fix it. And that's exactly what they did. Stress level 0, please add back the Boneworks standing mode. You can keep this hybrid mode in and just have it be those two. But right now, hybrid limits how the player can move in a very annoying and intrusive way. Lastly, the guns. This one was difficult to pinpoint because it started as the guns just generally feeling off compared to Boneworks, but after some experimentation, I think we figured out the main issues pertaining to the guns. For the two-handed guns, they collide with the player body in a way that makes it impossible to line up the sights just after pulling the gun up to your eye line. The pistols are a little more complicated. They feel fine one-handed, but when you two-hand them, your second hand has some weird interaction with it that causes the aim to be ever so slightly off where you think it's going to be. These two issues are why I think people have been suggesting that the guns don't shoot where they're aiming, or that the bullets just aren't coming out when you shoot sometimes in the reviews. P.S. The extra grab range that the player has in Bone Lab makes the MP5 foregrip very inconsistent to grab when the charging handle grip point is so close to it. Oh wow! PPS. The extra grab positions on most of the guns are awful and only contribute to grabbing the guns in a way that you never want to. Ultimately, these new quirks of the player mechanics make it constantly feel like you're fighting your own body to do anything. From shoving yourself off high places, to being unable to jump when you want to, these are issues Boneworks never had. Boneworks felt fluid and responsive, and Bonelab feels rigid and clunky. The longevity of this game relies on these erroneous changes being reworked.
But, okay, let's look at Bonelab's campaign, since maybe a lot of effort went to this instead. Well, unfortunately, it's nothing to praise. Boneworks' campaign, while being limited into scope and having some maps which weren't quite so great, still was enjoyable and had a good cohesion traveling through a mysteriously empty city with a great atmosphere and fascinating set pieces. The Bonelab campaign has no cohesion. Every map either feels like it's a half-finished map from Boneworks, or is literally a haphazardly placed sandbox map put into the campaign. Something which no game could possibly get away with without being laughed off the Steam page. To go more in depth on the levels themselves, the first two levels, overall, are pretty decent. They feel like a proper continuation on Boneworks' expansive, though linear levels, and have some pretty great set pieces, especially the intro to the game and the lab itself. They feel well polished and provide an amazing hook to get into the game. I actually think the way that you have to break out of the Bone Lab is pretty cool, and it makes it really feel like you're going somewhere you're not supposed to. However, as soon as you leave the second map and enter Long Run is where it starts to decline. The third map itself is pretty derivative of the early segments of Boneworks, especially the runoff level, and has many puzzles and elements you can just frankly ignore to progress through the stage. It feels more of the same from Boneworks with little deviation, other than its unfitting music and strange puzzles. The fourth level is an interesting set piece to go through and showcases the sitting and vehicle physics well, but it doesn't really offer too much outside of that, and the fifth level too feels like more of the same. But the introduction of Jimmy is extremely well done, and the hints of it in the prior level with the 98.6 radio are great for keen fans. But beyond this point is where the game just throws its remaining extra Bonelab stages posing as tutorials for the body log. For an already short campaign, just to throw out levels purely to show off game modes from the lab feels cheap and is overall disappointing, as well as some of the levels like the Moon and Pillar ones being unbelievably frustrating and tedious. There are a handful of stages after these tutorials where the body log is put to full use with its avatar switching, which, feels great, and then the game ends. It still feels good to go through these levels with a Marrow player body, but that's another piece of credit to hand off to Boneworks. The disjointed nature of this kills any sense of tone this game could possibly have, and kills any suspense and intrigue given previously. The level of inadequacy in the design offered here, with its only excuse as being a tech demo, is so insulting that it's hard to imagine them thinking this was a product worth selling. And if you actually take a look at the sandbox the game has as its main selling point other than the campaign, it only comes with a pitiful 2 to 3 levels per game mode. Not only that, but the built-in leaderboards are made completely meaningless when you take into account the fact that you can simply cheat the developer tools into them without any limitation whatsoever. It's that level of thoughtless design which makes Bonelab feel like every part of it was made with no second pass, and just to release it as fast as possible, while only making it appear to have an entire game's worth of content. Once again, if we look beyond this, the story presentation, while better than Boneworks, is hardly enough of a band-aid to cover the gaping wound in effort or cohesion Bonelab's campaign lacks. And its only closing message literally telling the player to finish the game themselves? It's so transparently lazy, I haven't seen anything like this in another game in my entire life. So what does Bonelab have to its name? How many times are we going to see Boneworks again and praise it? How can we praise a game with not even a single new enemy, that isn't a reskin, as being distinct enough to spend money on? The only promise this game has is with its mod support, but when the main claim to fame a game has is its ability to be added onto, that only really shows how little effort was put in by the developers. Not only that, but the mod support on release is only avatars and maps, which is especially embarrassing when Boneworks already had a significant modding scene that added the same thing, and that was entirely made by the community. I want to like this game. I want to be able to say that it's amazing to have another game with the wonderful interaction and feeling Marrow provides to its players, but I just cannot excuse passing off an old game with some tweaks as a brand new product so easily. And that so many people come to its defense only shows how much people are willing to put up with mediocrity rather than that the game is actually good. I typically try to be constructive or give suggestions as to what could fix something when I dislike it, But Bone Lab is so devoid of any substance that there is simply no reason for this to be anything other than an expansion of Boneworks. It's impossible to have constructive criticism when the only thing making this game itself isn't even unique, let alone the issues with the player body introduced in Bone Lab. The simple fact this game's only pride is in stuff from Boneworks is already enough to push it into sheer irrelevance. Every possible bit of praise to be given always feels like it's something meant to be for Boneworks, that this game is passing off as its own, minus all the mystique. While some of these things can be fixed with patches, honestly, it doesn't feel like we should have to expect that, and many of them just can't be fixed. I dislike having to make my first video after a year be so impartially negative, but the amount of blind praise I've seen on a game with so little going for it was really frustrating to see. I've had a longer video on Stress Level Zero in general planned for a while, as well as some other videos on other topics. However, being so blindsided by the state of Bone Lab and its reception was too much for me to not feel the need to get my thoughts out on it as soon as I could. In that future SLZ video, I plan to cover the story itself in more depth too, and my thoughts on it. I hope in the next video I don't have to speak so much vitriol on something. And thank you for watching this point, especially if you're a fan of Bone Lab, and I hope some of this can change your perspective on this game. Oh, and before I forget, one of the only good things from Boneworks that has been retained in this game is the soundtrack. God bless you, Michael Wyckoff. You can do no wrong.